The room carried a heavy stillness, broken only by the faint murmurs of judgment that passed from lip to lip. Mary Ann stood with her head bowed, her cheeks burning as though the whole world had conspired to shame her. Her father's voice rose above the whispers, sharp and cutting, declaring her a punishment, rather than a daughter. At 19, Mary Ann had endured insults all her life, words like useless, burden, and shame, but nothing stung like hearing that she was to be given away. She wasn't accused of stealing, nor of disobedience, nor of sin. Her crime was her body, round, soft, and heavy in a society that valued frail beauty. She was not what suitors wanted, and her parents, tired of what they called disgrace, had decided to wash their hands of her. Her mother's eyes flickered with relief rather than sorrow as her father announced his verdict. If she cannot be married with pride, she shall be given away to a man who can barely keep food on his own table. Perhaps then she will learn humility. The elders nodded in agreement, their eyes sliding over Mary Ann as though she were an object, not a girl trembling inside her own skin. When the wagon arrived the next morning, she climbed into it with shaking hands. Dust rose around the wheels as the horses trudged away from the town, carrying her toward a future she had no say in. She stared down at her lap, at the fabric of her faded dress stretched tight over her knees, and fought the tears that wanted to spill. The words replayed in her mind: punishment, burden, shame, and with each repetition she felt smaller, as though she were disappearing into herself. The road grew narrower, the air more quiet as they left behind the cobblestone streets and entered the wilderness. Weeds brushed the sides of the wagon, and the smell of tilled soil mingled with the fresh tang of pine. Mary Ann had been told the farmer lived far from town, that his home was poor and his table emptier still. She tried to prepare herself for the sight of a crooked shack and a bitter man who would treat her as nothing more than a curse delivered to his doorstep. When the wagon finally stopped, her father yanked her arm and pulled her down roughly. She stumbled, catching herself against the wooden gate of a small cabin. Standing there was the man they had spoken of, the farmer named Elias. He was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders, sun-browned skin, and hands that bore the marks of endless work. His clothes were plain, his boots dusty, but his gaze startled her most of all. It was not cruel, not mocking. It was steady, quiet, searching. "You've brought me your daughter?" Elias asked, his tone not greedy, not mocking, but puzzled. "She's useless to us," her father snapped, pushing Mary Ann forward as though she were livestock being traded. "She is yours now. Consider her your wife. Do what you will." Mary Ann wanted the earth to swallow her whole. Her heart pounded so loud she feared they would hear it. Her face burned as she stood there, her father's words ringing in her ears. She dared not look at Elias, certain he must already despise her. But when her father turned his back and walked away, leaving her standing alone with the man, Elias did not sneer. He did not call her names. Instead, after a long silence, he spoke in a voice both calm and warm, "Come inside. You're safe here." The words shocked her. She had expected cruelty, but his voice carried neither pity nor disgust. Slowly, she followed him into the small wooden cabin. It was simple but clean. A table sat by the window, a pot of soup simmering gently over the fire, filling the air with the scent of onions and herbs. Chickens clucked softly outside, and the faint neigh of a horse carried in from the yard. It was not wealth, but neither was it the misery she had braced herself for. That evening, Elias placed a bowl of soup in front of her. She hesitated, then took a spoonful. It was warm, rich, and tasted better than anything she had eaten in days. She dared to glance at him, sitting across the table, his eyes fixed on his meal. He did not watch her with judgment but with the quiet ease of a man used to silence. As the night deepened, Mary Ann sat on the edge of the narrow bed prepared for her, staring at the wooden beams overhead. Her father's words still echoed, but something else lingered now too, the sound of Elias saying, "You're safe here." She clutched at that sentence as though it were a lifeline. She still believed she had been delivered into a life of punishment, condemned to live with a poor man scraping by, but a seed of doubt stirred within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, things were not what they seemed. Days slipped into weeks, and Mary Ann's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. She rose each morning to the sound of roosters crowing, the golden light of dawn spilling across the small cabin. At first, she kept to herself, unsure of her place, uncertain how Elias truly saw her. She moved slowly, cautiously, bracing herself for harsh words or disdain that never came. Elias did not treat her like a punishment. He spoke to her as if she were simply another person sharing his roof. That small kindness confused her, but it also began to soothe the wounds left by years of cruelty. When he worked outside, Elias often asked her to walk with him. She tried, though self-conscious of her heavy frame, the way her body moved, the way her breathing grew quick on hills. She expected him to laugh, but he never did. Instead, he said quietly, "The land doesn't care if you're thin or thick, fast or slow. It cares if you put your hands to it, if you give it your heart." Those words settled into her like sunlight breaking through clouds. Slowly, Marianne began to help, feeding the hens, gathering eggs, chopping vegetables for stew. Her hands grew rougher, but her heart lighter. For the first time, she felt useful, needed even, and not once did Elias call her a burden. Still, the mystery of him tugged at her. For all his simplicity, he never seemed troubled about food or supplies. His small cabin never lacked what it needed. Once, when she mentioned her surprise at having so much firewood neatly stacked, he only smiled faintly and said, "There's more than enough, Marianne." More than enough. One morning, Elias told her they would take a wagon ride. Marianne thought it was to fetch salt or flour from the nearest village. She climbed aboard beside him, the wooden seat hard beneath her, the creak of the wheels steady as the horse carried them down a winding dirt path. The air was fresh with spring, carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. She felt nervous, unsure why he seemed quietly excited. They rode over a hill, and as the wagon crested the top, Marianne's breath caught in her chest. Spread out before her was not a meager farm but a vast kingdom of land. Golden fields stretched as far as the eye could see, wheat swaying like an endless sea in the wind. Orchards of apple and pear trees shimmered under the sunlight, their blossoms pale pink and white. Herds of cattle grazed on rolling hills, their backs glinting in the morning light. Wagons moved along dirt lanes, workers called greetings, and everywhere she looked, life thrived. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What is this?" she whispered. Elias flicked the reins lightly, guiding the horse onward. Men tipped their hats to him as they passed. One man handed him a ledger, asking for instructions about the fields. Another waved, calling out, "Morning, sir." Each gesture of respect struck Marianne. Like a revelation, this was no struggling farmer scraping by. This was a man who commanded thousands of acres, orchards, herds, and workers. Her heart pounded as she turned to him. "All of this, it's yours." Elias nodded, his expression calm, almost amused at her astonishment. "It is. My family built it over generations. I've chosen to live in the cabin because I prefer a simple life close to the earth. I wanted to see if you could look at me as a man, not a fortune." Marianne could not speak. Her throat tightened as tears gathered in her eyes. All her life she had been told she was nothing, that she was unwanted, unworthy. Her parents had cast her aside as punishment, believing they had saddled her to a poor man's misery. Yet here she was, sitting beside a man who was not only wealthy but who had shown her more respect and kindness in a few weeks than her family had in years. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elias looked at her then, his eyes steady, kind, unyielding. "Because you needed to know that you are valuable without gold, without land. I needed you to see yourself before you saw this." The tears spilled, running down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt a strange, deep warmth rising in her chest. Hope, dignity, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she was not a curse after all. She turned her gaze back to the land, to the golden fields glowing under the sun, and let the tears fall freely. The wagon rattled on, carrying her through the vastness of a future she had never imagined, and Marianne realized that what her family had intended as her punishment had turned into the greatest blessing of her life.